Welcome to the Swim Chats podcast. I'm Shona Riddell, a writer, former journalist and ocean swimmer from Wellington, Aotearoa, New Zealand. For each episode, I'll feature a different guest from our swim community. They'll be dippers, adventure swimmers, coaches and conservationists with one thing in common. They all love being in the sea. So whether you're a swimmer yourself or just interested in stories about the ocean and people expanding their comfort zones, I hope you enjoy these swim chats. Please hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Brett, welcome to Swim Chats.
Thank you.
We're live.
Indeed.
I was thinking we're sort of like ships in the night because we're both in Barb Watson's group, but you must swim earlier than I do. I think
you're normally there at 8, are you?
Yes, that's right. I'm one of the Sunday 8 o'clock crew. So I think you're well done and dusted with your swim by then. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm usually in at 7.
7.
Yeah.
And is that all year round?
All year round.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And are you in any other swim groups as well?
I swim. No, it's all Barb Watson actually. We swim 9i Saturday morning, 5:45, and then on Saturday, and then of course Sunday sea swims. Tuesday, Thursday, 5:30 at Cannons Creek in the morning, and then Wednesday back at Oriental Bay, 6 a.m.
6 a.m.
So in the dark.
Bright and early, yeah. So I'm keen to talk to you about swimming in the dark because
Cool.
not many people do that. Yeah. So at the moment it's definitely dark. We're coming into the shorter days just before winter.
Yes.
I think the sea temperature is about 14 degrees.
At the moment, it's a wee bit warmer. I think it's still around 15 something. I don't think it's quite got down to 14 yet, but it won't be long.
Yeah. Are you quite into the metrics? Do you like to know the temperatures and the times and all that sort of thing?
Sometimes, probably more for other people's swims rather than my own. Sometimes not knowing is easier. You just sort of turn up, oh yeah, it's got a little bit colder.
Yeah.
And just
that's so true. Yeah.
Get on with it,
Yeah, don't worry about it too much.
Yeah.
So do you swim early in the morning really to fit it around the rest of your life? Is that, or are you a morning person?
I find if I don't do it, then there's a chance that it won't happen. And so I think it is making it a priority, and you're saying, well, yeah, squeeze it in, put it in first, and then the rest of life sort of falls in around that.
So swimming in the dark, you have lights that you carry, is that right?
Yeah. So we generally put a light on my goggle strap at the back, and that just lets everybody see you. You connect with other swimmers, and any other water users that happen to be out there, which, to be honest, at this time of the year, there's not a lot. There's the odd sort of Wakarama crew that will go out, but that's about it.
And how far do you like to go?
We sort of do probably, again, this time of the year, you'll get out to the lighthouse once a month sort of thing. But yeah, it just gets starting to get shorter, and and keep it in close, just to for safety reasons, really. For hypothermia and stuff like that.
Yeah. And so for people who don't swim out to the lighthouse, so that's about a 2.5K return trip.
Yep.
So it's not a short swim for most people, and what does it feel like, I suppose, because the time you're swimming, do you get to see the sunrises?
Yeah, you do. Although we're just about at the point where it's dark when you hop in and dark when you hop out. But certainly, as the season changes, it's just such a beautiful place to be at that time of the day, to hop in when it's dark, and then, as you say, to to see the sky starting to get blue, and then finally light sort of appears. It's pretty surreal. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And
Mm.
are you swimming in the dark? Are you sort of mindful of being in the ocean at that time in terms of marine life? Like, is that something you're conscious of when you're swimming, or have you been doing it long enough that you're not phased?
No, look, I'm not phased. I think I dealt with that fear long time ago.
And did you deal with the fear simply by continuing to get in the water, or was there?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
just by ignoring it, really. I mean, knowing the odds, the odds are so slim. I think there was one shark attack and death recorded in Wellington way back, 100 years ago out at Wellington Heads. So, the numbers are stacked in my favor.
Yeah.
So
Isn't it?
yeah, I don't really worry about it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And have you always been a sea swimmer, or is this something you took up as an adult?
As an adult for me,
Hmm.
yeah,
Like
as an adult.
how recently?
Um, probably about probably about 14 years ago
Hmm.
for me. Yeah, just really wanted a group that was into sea swimming, and that's where Barb's group, they did both pool and sea, um and yeah, just allowed me to sort of feel confident with other swimmers around, to start with, and um, but plus, there is a place for the pool. You still need to do your technique type work and stuff to,
Yeah.
yeah, to get better.
Barb's group is very welcoming and inclusive, isn't it? Like
Isn't it?
it's for all levels, which
Yeah,
is fantastic.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's so much fun.
And so what was the motivation for getting in the first place? Did you know other people who were doing it, or were you training for something?
Um, I I think what happened for me is just just had this desire to feel more comfortable in the open water, and so that was sort of always in the back of my mind. um, and then yeah, just that group atmosphere just makes it so much easier to take part,
Yeah.
to get in, and
Yeah. That's
mm,
awesome.
mm.
And so when you're doing your sea swims, are you also focusing on technique?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I think about it a lot. In fact, people have asked, they say, well, what do you think about when you're out there for 13 hours, and I say, I just think about technique. I sort of think about what I'm doing, and and try and keep it tight,
Hmm.
as it were. Yeah,
But keeping it tight as in keeping not sort of flailing your arms about and legs and
that's
keeping
right.
everything
That's
connected.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. As you get tired, your arms start to go round instead of over.
Yeah.
Um, you, you get perhaps a bit too relaxed in your core,
Hmm.
whereas if you concentrate on keeping that a wee bit tighter, it sort of gives you better technique.
Yeah.
Mm,
And in Wellington and Oriental Bay, we get that prevalent northerly wind,
we do.
causes plenty of chop. So are you pretty comfortable swimming in the chop? Like,
Yeah.
does the chop deter you? Do you enjoy it?
I love the calm days.
Hmm.
Um, but I guess being, in windy Wellington, they're sort of few and far between. Um, so yeah, I enjoy sort of getting out into the chop as well. It often means you won't go as far, distance wise. You may choose to not go as far because it's, a wee bit more physically challenging. But yeah, I enjoy the roughness of it too. Um, we've had some really rough days. I remember spending 3/4 of an hour sitting in the car just watching it, trying to decide, are we going to go? And then finally going,
Wow.
and we got out there and just two of us, and we got separated and just sort of dealing with the conditions. Never ever felt unsafe,
Yeah.
but you just sort of go with it. You sort of adapt and then come back in.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's an audio podcast, but I'll just say you've got the biggest smile on your face right now. So you clearly enjoy the chop. I can tell
Absolutely.
some people find it really invigorating
Yep.
and other people find it less so. But yeah, I'm always interested to talk to people about swimming in the chop because it's something that I'm always personally working on.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you have any tips for how
Yeah.
how you swim through the chop, I'd
Yep.
be really interested.
Well, you've just got to, the first thing is stay relaxed. Don't tense up. I know it seems a hostile environment, but let's just relax into it. I feel that the conditions dictate when you're going to breathe.
Hmm.
There'll be times when you go to breathe and you feel, no, I can't. There's a wave there, and so you just sort of hold on a little bit longer. If you can bilateral breathe, then that's a big advantage too, to be able to face away from the weather. Yeah.
Awesome.
Mm.
And would you swim in the heavy rain as well? I'm just conscious of that because we've got particularly heavy rain right now.
Right
Are there
now,
any
absolutely.
conditions you don't swim in, I guess is my question.
Very rare that I wouldn't go.
Hmm.
We had 2 days of heavy rain last week, and I think it was late in the week, and Barb was sort of looking at, oh, do I cancel or not? Then at one stage she said, yeah, no, I think we have the day off. And we sort of got talking about it, a group of us, and checked in with John Cleveland. He seems to be the expert on the water quality. He said, no, it'll be fine. So we went in on Sunday, and you notice the difference in the layers of water. When there's fresh water on the top,
Hmm.
often it's a wee bit cooler. But yeah, there's not. I can't think of many times that we won't go. It's just something that we do.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about your marathon swims now.
Sure.
So in 2020, I know you swam across the Cook Strait,
That's right.
and I found an old article on Stuff, and
Oh, right.
the headline of the article is great. It says, after 10 hours, Brett Richardson emerges from Cook Strait hypothermic and victorious, which aren't often two words that you hear together.
Put together.
Yeah.
True. True. True.
So hypothermic, I mean, I know that that is relatively common for people swimming across the Cook Strait and that you're swimming in skins
Yeah.
and you're getting progressively
Yeah.
colder, I imagine. Um,
That's right.
let's start at the beginning. So how did you come to be swimming across the Cook Strait in the first place? Like, what was the inspiration behind it?
I'd always sort of held it Cook Strait up there as the ultimate um, local swim. Um, and I remember I was 8 years old, and I remember Mida McKenzie swimming Cook Strait, and back in those days, um, it hit the national headlines. It was big story on the news, and uh, I wasn't really a swimmer at that stage, but I remember, having it explained to me. Oh, she swam from here to there, and I just couldn't fathom it in my mind. But I guess, you know, it must have sort of sunk in there as a bit of an idea, way back then.
And how old was she? She was like 15 or
She
something. So
was 15. Yeah, she was 15 when she did it. Um,
incredible.
yeah. And so I guess, that was perhaps the seed way back then. And it didn't surface again until probably, around that time that I started swimming with Barb, which was I think it was 2012. And I didn't think it was a possibility. I wasn't working towards it, but in the back of my mind, it was always like, wow, that would be the ultimate, and then I just started swimming and getting around, the New Zealand swim series, the different swims around the country. And then started to increase the distance. Did the epic swim in Taupo, the 10K, wetsuit for the first time, non-wetsuit the next year. And then after that, just sort of kept pushing out. I found an event in Hong Kong, which was 15 kilometers. Thought, well, let's give that distance a go. Um, and yeah, just built from there really.
Oh, so with each distance that you were increasing by, did it
Yep.
feel like a big step each time, or did it just feel like something that happened organically each year?
No, it did feel like a big step. I think mentally, definitely, you've got to get your head around it. And
And how did you do that? Did you have any sort of techniques or process that you went through before each swim?
yeah, with Hong Kong, um, I I had the course all mapped out, and I knew that it was off the beach, and it was, 1.5 kilometers to the first turn buoy, and then it was 4 kilometers out of the bay to the next corner, and in my head I'd sort of memorized each leg so that at any point in time when I got to that point, I knew what I had left to go, and I think it was quite handy to sort of break it down into manageable bites. So instead of focusing on 15, you're focusing on, oh, right, there's the first 1,500 meters done. And then there's the next four. Oh, we've done 5.5K now. That, you just sort of had little markers and just sort of broke it down.
That is such a great idea.
Yeah,
I can imagine mentally that would make it feel a lot less overwhelming if you're
yeah,
just taking it one chunk at a time
yes,
and then you're done.
yes, 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 yeah,
Awesome. And so with the Cook Strait, who trained you for that? Was it Barb? Was it Phil Rush as well? His name comes up quite a bit in podcasts.
yeah. So I did my crossing with Phil,
Hmm.
um, and what sort of happened is I sort of had this interest in it, and I didn't, I hadn't talked to anybody who had ever done it, and one day I heard of a guy who was planning to do it, and I just heard his name, and I heard that he trained at Freiburg Pool, and so I basically stalked him. I basically turned up at that same training session and joined that squad, and it happened to be Phil Rush's squad.
Hmm.
And so I joined in at the back of one of the lanes there, and Mark Krynen was the guy's name, and he led that lane, and he's big, strapping, strong man. And eventually, I got to introduce myself to him, and just really started to do some training with him. when you decide to go long, you know, there's not so many people to train with. And so I think he enjoyed, having me available, I guess. Um, and and so I just started following him around. The only way I could keep up with him was if I drafted off him. He was so quick out in the sea and things. And so we spent quite a bit of time together, training and stuff. And then so it was really, really interesting for me being able to talk to somebody who had done a lot more than what I had done.
Right.
And we built up such a good friendship that um, when it came time for him to do his Cook Strait swim, he asked me if I'd like to go with him and be a support person. And so that was just a dream, to actually get out there on the big boat as he's swimming and just take it all in, see what you have to go through to be able to achieve it.
I imagine that would make such a big difference to
Oh,
have the picture in your mind and then fear of the
absolutely,
distance and
absolutely.
everything that might come up.
Yep. And so that was 2016, and his swim was quite tricky, as in the tides, and I think it was thought that he would do about 8 hours, which is a really good time. But on the day it was 12 and a half hours. So, just such a big effort. Mark finished in the dark and it was absolutely pitch black.
Wow.
We were on the big boat. We couldn't see him finish, but we were just listening to the radio and getting updates from the radio. And then finally he finished. He was brought back to the boat and Mark had hypothermia as well. And again, it was quite brutal seeing him in the state and just watching that recovery.
Mm.
Um,
Did that deter you at all? Or
look,
did it?
I didn't race out and put my name down. I didn't say,
Mhm.
yes, I want to do this. So I spent, quite a bit more time, just sort of processing it,
Reflecting, yeah.
thinking about it and things. Didn't stop swimming, kept swimming. Um, and then there was another lady, Pip Wren, who decided to do it. And same thing happened. I started swimming with Pip, and exactly the same thing, actually. She asked me to go as a support person. So I got to come the other way for her swim. She went south to north. And
And
so,
is that based on the currents of the day?
yeah, it's based on what the weather is going to do in the afternoon.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, you know, generally the weather sort of might get up in the afternoon, and if it's going to be more favorable to go one way than the other, then that's what they decide. Yeah.
Hmm. Which direction did you swim?
Uh, I swam north to south.
Right.
Yeah,
I
north.
was reading, I read in the staff article about your swim that you were training 8 times a week for up to 5 hours at a time in the pool.
Yep.
So
Yep.
up to 5 hours, what would a typical session be like? Was it based on time or distance or both?
So, what I would do is, yeah, I would sort of have one endurance set a week. And because we went so early, I think it was the 14th of November. So we went very early in the season. or it might have been the 20th, I can't remember now. Um,
What was the water temperature? Do you remember?
it was 14 when I hopped in,
Mm,
and it dropped to about 12 when I
that's
hopped in.
fresh.
So
Yeah.
it was pretty cool.
Mm.
But because it was so early, it meant that I couldn't do a whole lot of endurance in the sea.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sort of did my endurance sets in the pool, and I had a little regime of increasing my time by half an hour each week and for that endurance set. And so, you know, 2.5, 3.5, up to, 5 hours basically. And at the end of each session, I would just sit in the pool for a little bit longer and just look at the other end and say to myself, could you do another extra half hour if you had to? And I'd say, yep. And that was just a little visualization sort of exercise that I'd do at the same time.
Cool. And
Mm.
with your Cook Strait swim, did you map it out the same way you mapped out your earlier swims?
No, there's not the reference points.
That's
It's
what I was
just
wondering.
A to B. Um, what ended up happening is I didn't get any feedback about how I was going until until I had 10 kilometers to go, and that was a distance that I knew and could sort of process in my mind. I could say, oh, that's 4 lighthouse swims left to go,
Yeah.
sort of thing. And but as usually happens, it's that second half of the swim is where a whole lot of things happen. You're getting tired. You've got to, well, the tides generally are about to change, and so you've got to, try and be at a certain point at a certain time, and it's there's a lot that happens in that second part of the swim.
Yeah. And
Mm.
are you still thinking about your technique in a swim that long, or is it more a mental
Do you
game?
know, I think as hypothermia comes on and stuff like that, I think, just to be able to get one arm over,
Yeah. More on autopilot.
yeah, more on autopilot by that stage. I remember when I swam Cook Strait, I wasn't a bilateral breather. I just sort of breathed to my left side. And so as a result, um, my right shoulder was having to do a lot of extra work to sort of, lift me out. And it, as a result of that workload, it had become very, very sore. And of course, that cold, I remember swimming along, and then there were just these streams of cold water which would come up from the depths. And oh my word, they would hit your body, and it was painful,
I
And
remember John Hancock was describing that in his episode.
oh, true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's called an upwelling, I think. And he
yeah,
said, yeah, it was good that he was prepared for it because it
yeah,
was a lot colder than he expected.
yes, yes. And generally it's colder on the South Island side, so yeah, start warmer, and then you're going into the cold if you're doing north to south. And yeah, yeah,
It's interesting you mentioned bilateral breathing because I do tend to do the same. I tend to breathe on my left.
yes,
Something I'm trying to.
yeah,
So was the Cook Strait swim your motivation to then improve your bilateral breathing?
absolutely.
Yeah.
After that, I changed,
Mm.
I absolutely changed. I was not going to go through that again.
Right. And
Yep,
did you change by doing sets in the pool where you would breathe only one side, for
yep,
example? And
yep.
and so now you're a bilateral breather.
I'm a bilateral breather. Yeah.
Do you tend to breathe every 3 strokes or
Yes. Yep.
right?
Every 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you trained to do that simply by constant repetition, or was there a yeah?
Yep. Yep. Barb has a good way of doing it. She'll say, swim this length, breathing to the windows. And when you come back the other way, still breathe to those same windows. So that gives the swimmer the opportunity to still maintain their breathing every two strokes, if that's what they like, and and then coming back the other way, you're still breathing every two, but you're breathing to your offside.
Yeah, and your body gets familiar with it, right?
That's right. Gets
Mm.
familiar with it. And then eventually I actually found it easier to bilateral breathe than to breathe to the windows on my offside. And so I chose the less of two evils.
Well, congratulations on your Cook Strait swim.
Thank
That
you.
was phenomenal.
Thank you.
What was your distance in the end, if you don't mind my asking?
On the day, 28 kilometers.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, yeah.
And how do you recover from a swim like that in terms of physically, but also mentally? Because I imagine, yeah, it must be a huge shift moving away from all the training you did and all the anticipation and the adrenaline to the aftermath.
Yeah. I went to work the next day
Wow.
and the day, so I went to work the next day, and then the next day after that, one of my staff members said, "You look a lot better today." So I had no idea that I didn't look good. But yeah, there must have been some sort of, you know,
Recovery going on.
hangover from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there was no euphoria from having achieved it. But I think it was just, the body just went into this big recovery mode. Like my friend Mark, it I spent the whole journey back from the South Island to Mana Marina on the floor, just with 10 blankets on me and just shivering, um, deep shivering, you know. And I remember getting up just before the boat got in, and this was 10 o'clock at night, um, on a Tuesday night, and there were 30 people had come down to the marina to welcome me in.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It was incredible. So Barb had a session that night up at Cannons Creek Pool, and so they were training. Barb had the tracker. They would come into the wall. How's he doing? They'd get updates from Barb, and then they just transitioned from their training session. Well, let's go down to the marina, and one of the guys who lives local went off and made lots of thermoses of coffee, and they were hanging around waiting for me to get in. And a whole lot of people from the Titahi Bay Surf Club came down as well to welcome me in.
I just love that so much because, a big part of swimming is the community, isn't it?
Yes,
It's the people.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
That's cool that everybody was celebrating.
yeah, was into it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it really surprised me.
Oh.
It was so nice.
So skipping ahead, you also swam the Foveaux Strait.
Yes.
And I'm not missing any big swims, am I, in between
No,
2024, right?
no.
They're both big enough. So that was just over a year ago, January 2024,
Yes.
with your Foveaux Strait swim. Was that a swim you started planning immediately after Cook Strait? As in, I've done this big swim, what's the next thing to do? Or did it take time to come around to that idea?
I remember how it came about. I remember turning up to Oriental Bay for a Sunday morning swim, and it was in winter, and it was dark, and it was raining, and I sort of hopped out of the car, and I looked out, and I said to myself, "What are you doing here?" You know, and I realized at that point it was because I didn't have a goal. I didn't have a goal. That was why, all of a sudden it felt uncomfortable, or I was doubting, should I be here?
Yeah.
And so a week or so later, um, oh, I remember Caitlin O'Reilly had just swum Foveaux Strait. And I think that planted the seed in my head. And so when I bumped into Phil one morning down at Freiburg, and I said to him, "Do you think I'd be capable of swimming Cook Strait?" And he turned around and he said, "Great, you're number 3 on my list." So
You're in the queue.
that's it. And I just had a question, am I capable? But he put me on the
And
list.
suddenly you were there. It
Yeah.
was happening.
So
That's
I laughed, I just laughed, and I went out for a swim. But finally, through him presenting it to me in that way, I was on another
you were
journey.
locked in.
Yeah, I was locked in.
And so how much time passed between that point and your actual swim? Like how much time did you have to train?
So there was 4 years in between swims. I think that, it might have only been 6 months after Cook before, this new goal was presented. And but I wasn't in a hurry. Um, uh, COVID came along. Oh no, that was sorry, that was Cook. So no, that was the earliest swim. Um, so I had plenty of time. I wasn't in a hurry. I was pretty relaxed about it. Um, I think a season might have come and gone, and there were no opportunities at all, and so we had to wait another year, sort of thing.
Yeah, I've heard with Foveaux that you have to wait for the conditions to be just right, and that
Well,
can take a
yeah,
year or two.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just the same as Cook. You can only go out there on a good day, and Foveaux, there's even less opportunities. Their season is probably only 6 weeks, from you know the end of January, through to mid-March, maybe a little bit more. So yeah, if it's just that much narrower.
And what were conditions like on the day that you did your swim?
They were great. They were really good. Um, I enjoyed that swim more than Cook Strait.
Hmm.
Cook Strait is amazing place. The water is so clear and pristine. It is really pristine. It's beautiful. Um, but Foveaux was, um, I'd say, not as clear, not as pristine, and that's just local conditions, on the day. But it was warmer. It was 16 degrees as opposed to that
Wow, I
12.
was not expecting you to say it was warmer because it's
No, it
further
was.
south, right? Yeah.
It was. 16 was not a problem. It was great.
And did you see any marine life while you were swimming, Foveaux?
I saw no marine life.
Wow.
Yeah. No, nah, nothing, nothing. And there was always talk about the marine life down there. In fact, the night before, the group went out into town for a meal together, and we sat down in this restaurant, and there's a local man at the table next to us, and he sort of recognized that we weren't locals, and he said, "Oh, what are you lot down here for?" And one of the groups says, "Oh, we're down here to swim Foveaux." And immediately he launches into the stories about the sharks in Foveaux Strait.
Just
And
what you want to hear.
Phil was sitting rather close to him, and he said, "Oh, rah, rah, rah," he tried to turn him off as quick as he could. It was hilarious.
Did you have the sharks in your mind when you were swimming? Or are you
Oh,
quite good at compartmentalizing?
yeah, no, 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 no. They weren't, probably about three-quarters of the way across, I remembered, oh yeah, that's right, we're in shark territory. And I sort of said, "Where are you? Where are you? Show yourself," as a bit of, I don't know, but yeah, but nah, nothing to see.
And it's a very long time to be swimming. And I know there are current shifts and so on. Were the final few hours of the swim particularly challenging in the same way that Cook Strait was? Or because it was a slightly warmer temperature, did it feel less of a challenge? Well, not less of a challenge, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I have a bit of a technique of not looking at how far away the finish is,
Hmm.
because it's very hard to judge, and I think that just plays on your mind. And so um, I received some advice from a Cook Strait swimmer, and her advice was, don't look forward, don't look back. And so I adopted that as my technique, if you like. And so I was just sort of watching the crew on the IRB, and they were sort of indicating with their hands, the gap is getting smaller with their hands, and I'm thinking in my head, what does that mean? Is it a kilometer? Is it? And so I still resisted the temptation to look up,
Mm.
and I just waited. And in both cases, Cook and Foveaux, Phil sort of stopped me and said, "Look over there, go and touch that rock," you know. And in Cook Strait, it was just 10 meters away. So that was really cool. And Foveaux would have been the same.
Awesome. That's
Mm.
such a good idea to not focus on where you've come from or where you're going and get too fixated or distracted.
Yeah, yeah. I really recommend it.
Yeah, I can
It-
imagine it would really play mind games with
yeah,
you, trying
yeah,
to
yeah,
trying to
yeah,
figure it
for
out.
real. And once you get caught up in the tides and things like that, you might be 3 kilometers from the finish or 3K from the land, but in fact, the tide's going to do this and that with you, and you can easily double that distance.
What do you
So
like to eat and drink while you're on a long swim? I know everyone has different preferences.
yeah, I tend to try and keep it simple and just go on gels and electrolyte type drinks. Yep. And then just some extra little treats along the way too, some sort of lollies, you
Yeah,
know.
motivation.
Yeah, Coca-Cola for the last sort of hour or so.
So swimming across a body of water,
Yep.
a giant body of water. Some people talk about conquering water when they swim across a strait. Is that how it feels to you?
Jonah, I think I have an appreciation for the strait that I'm crossing, and I recognize that I'm only going to achieve it if nature lets me,
Mm.
and so yeah, I don't sort of think about that conquering it so much. I don't sort of hold that up there as a target, I suppose, or as a, yeah, description.
Yeah. Does it come
Mm.
with the gratitude then? It sounds like it does.
Say that again.
Does it come with a feeling of gratitude?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
And swimming through all the seasons like you do you feel quite connected to nature. I personally do. I feel like it's given me a real appreciation for all the different weather conditions, different light, different times of the year,
Yeah.
a lot more than previously.
Yeah. Been out in nature. I guess a lot of people get that from being in the bush or walking in the hills or but yeah, for us it's sort of out in the water and watching the clouds and the, as you mentioned before, the sunrise and seeing all those changes.
Do you ever swim by yourself?
Yes. Yep. Yep. Um, yeah. Quite often.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
In the harbour, or are there other parts of Wellington you like to swim in?
Um, so yeah, I mean, sometimes you'll turn up for that regular Wednesday morning swim, and my mate suddenly had to go to work early or whatever, and so I'll be out there in the dark by myself, which I don't mind.
Do you quite enjoy swimming by yourself, or do you
Yeah,
prefer company?
yeah, I do. If I'm by myself, I tend to just keep moving, whereas if we go out in a group, we'll arrange to sort of meet at certain points along the way and sort of regroup and then go again. Um, so yeah, I enjoy both swimming with others and by myself.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And both your marathon swims, I believe you completed in your 50s, is that right?
Yes.
And so, as someone who's approaching 50, I'm curious to know, does swimming feel different for you as you get older? Like compared with 10 years ago, for example, do you swim a different way or think about
I
it
think
differently?
I think the others who you I think the others who I swim with are getting faster,
Mm.
or maybe it's me slowing down.
Right. So it's a matter of perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we do slow down. I'm not as strong as I used to be, um, but at the same time, I swim with people who are half my age and keep ahead of them. So, there must be some technique in there which is worth having.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you have any particular swims that you're planning for at the moment, or like what's important to you right now in your swimming? Are you training or just enjoying
So
recreational swims?
swimming Lake Taupo would give me the New Zealand Triple Crown. And so I've got that in the back of my head. And I think that keeps me turning up at the beach in the dark and in the cold, that sort of loose sort of idea. I haven't booked it or committed to it. Um, and I think, I had 4 years between Cook and Foveaux, and, maybe that same sort of distance in between, before I potentially did Taupo would be a good thing. I'm happy to sort of keep that loose goal alive for that long sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would be quite a different experience, I imagine, because it's fresh water.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have less buoyancy, but then you don't have the current so much to deal with.
That's right.
That would be
That's
quite a
right.
different experience. And it's
Yeah.
40 kilometers, is that right?
Yeah. It's a big, long one.
Mm.
And I've seen some rough conditions on that lake, that some swimmers have had to deal with.
Mm. But
But
it seems like you'd be all right with that.
I think so.
You'd be used to
I think so. Yeah.
it.
From all those Wellington mornings in the rough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how, so you swim through winter, you don't swim in a wetsuit anymore.
Nope.
How do you warm up after a fresh swim?
Yep. So I take a thermos of hot drink and I try and get that into me straight away. I start drinking that as I'm getting dressed. Um, the ideal situation is not to hop into a spa pool or sauna or steam room. It's just, warm up slowly. I find that during winter it can take a good couple of hours before I'm feeling, I can feel my feet again. That's how I normally do it. You just got to do it slow, and especially the colder it is, the longer it sort of takes to get that feeling back. Yeah.
Good advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's something you learn by doing, isn't it?
Yeah, really. The swims usually become shorter in winter. I sort of know some signs on my body when I'm getting cold. I find that I can no longer hold my fingers together when I'm catching the water out front, and suddenly my fingers are sort of starting to open up. That's a bit of a sign for me that not too much longer now, and we need to hop out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to have an indicator, isn't it?
Yeah. Another one that Barb does is she says, if you can't remember your phone number, it's time to hop out.
That's right. Yeah. And sometimes I am thinking of my phone number.
Oh, yeah, you remember it.
It's really cold, and I start worrying that I'm too cold, and then I think, oh, well, I can remember my phone number, and
Yeah.
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 But yeah, it's definitely something important to be mindful of,
Absolutely.
especially if you're a beginner.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brett,
I've really enjoyed our conversation today.
Me too.
I've learned so much from you. I know you're a very experienced and wise swimmer, that a lot of people come to you for advice on, endurance and cold water swimming and marathon swimming. Is there anything else you'd like to share that I haven't asked you about?
Not really. I sort of went on from doing my Cook Strait swim to doing a bit of navigating with Phil. And so these days, when he has a swimmer booked to go out on Cook Strait, I'm often part of that team that helps get them across. And so there's, it takes quite a team really to put it all together.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun to, help others achieve that same goal.
Yeah.
Really
That's
cool.
such a great way to contribute.
Yeah.
And such an important role to play. And I imagine also a great way to learn more yourself by watching other people. Yeah.
For sure. Seeing how they do it. Yep.
Something I've learned that, you don't always have to be swimming to learn about swimming.
Yeah. Just got to have your ears open and listen to the conversation and eyes open, watch how other people do it. Yeah.
Awesome, Brett. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Shona.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Swim Chats. Please remember to follow or subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you enjoyed it, you can leave a 5-star rating and review, which helps other people find it too. Enjoy the water, and we'll see you next time.